Gene Soroka is the Executive Director of the Port of Los Angeles. I could introduce Gene by reading his bio, but his background is fairly well known by all. Instead, I would just like to say that since the last time we got together for this event several years ago, much has changed. The world has gotten smaller, more complex, and one in which we have faced many challenges. In the end, it was the supply chain, dock workers, truckers, vessel crews, train and warehouse personnel, terminal operators, ocean carriers, port staff, and the like that kept the world economy intact, moving more cargo than at any other time in history. Despite the public health challenges and working remotely, Gene was at the forefront of educating people about the workings of the supply chain. And I'd like to show you a short video.
Gene Soroka is the port's executive director.
There's not a day that goes by, Tom, that something in the supply chain doesn't affect us.
How do you do it?
Oh, it's going to be a fight. It really is. We've got to get a workforce in the warehouses and the trucking industry that are complementary to all this cargo that's coming in right now.
What does it mean for the Port of LA?
Well, being a leading indicator for the U.S. economy, watching these upstream inventories will be very important. We're trying to segment cargo as best we can, TJ. We're not a warehouse, we're a transit facility. It's like taking 10 lanes of freeway traffic and putting them into 5. You're still moving record volume, but you need even more throughput than you have before. We brought those ships that were backed up from 109 vessels down to single digits, all while moving near record amounts of cargo in the first 7 months. We can move to the west side over to Chiwon or up the coast to Nansha, Guangzhou, Dongguan, etc. The aging containers that we've talked about so many times before are now down nearly 60%. 2/3 of the cargo that leaves California goes out by rail, so this is absolutely imperative that we get this rail agreement done. We've become a little more adept, we're pivoting quickly and moving forward, but we're watching this very closely.
A very busy man these days. Gene Soroka, thank you so much for your time.
And that's just what Gene did last Tuesday. This short video is a small sampling of the hundreds of interviews Gene has done that shows the level of interest and importance of our industry and his role in it, along with that of the Port of Los Angeles. We survived, we thrived, and we're better prepared for future challenges. Please join me in welcoming the Executive Director of the Port of Los Angeles, Gene Soroka.
Thank you, John, and thank you all for being with us today. By joining us here, you're helping EXP and the International Seafarers Center advance their missions. The Port is committed to supporting both of these great institutions and ensuring that the important services they provide are sustained well into the future. Councilmember McCosker, it's a pleasure to welcome you into your new role as leader of the 15th District, the new 1-5. Given the challenges our city and port face right now, there's no one better suited to serve this district, and I look forward to continuing our work together. I also want to acknowledge the Board of Harbor Commissions, as John did just a moment ago. Los Angeles Harbor Commission President Jamie Lee, Vice President Ed Renwick, Commissioners Diane Middleton, Lucia Moreno-Linares, and Anthony Perosi. Ladies and gentlemen, these 5 individuals have helped guide our port through some of the most challenging periods in our history. I also want to recognize the heroic efforts of so many of you in this room. Longshore labor, seafarers, truck, rail, chassis, and our marine terminal operators. All of you work tirelessly for months on end to manage our record cargo flows. For that, we all owe you a deep debt of gratitude. It's been 3 years since we've been together in person, and man, it's great to be back. A lot has changed in that time. The historic import surge and various economic trials that we've all experienced have stretched our capacity and stamina. Think about it. Through last July, we saw over 2 years of unprecedented volume, averaging a peak season month every month. We started 2022 at that same frenetic pace with 109 vessels in our queue. Yet we ended with a disappointing 20% decline that began last August. That was triggered by an early peak season, shifting of cargo to the East and Gulf Coasts, and now, more recently, a nationwide slowing of imports. Still, even with all that, nearly 10 million container units crossed our docks, making 2022 our silver medal year, the second best in our 115-year history. And thanks to so many of you here today, 2022 also marks our 23rd consecutive year as the nation's #1 container port. Over the past few years, as we've risen to each challenge, we've become a stronger and more resilient port. The capabilities we developed during that time have positioned us well to grow our market share, fulfill our commitment to create jobs, and build a better quality of life for our communities. That's our purpose, and that's why we are here, to make Los Angeles the best place in the world to live and do business. Now, as port operations return to more normal conditions, we're laser focused on fulfilling that purpose in 2023 and beyond. It's been said that Los Angeles is the future, only sooner. If that's true, then we have an opportunity to create a future that works for all of us, one in which we contribute to the well-being of our community and share the responsibility to make the future equitable, prosperous, and sustainable. In 2023, we're committed to initiatives that do just that, including joining forces in the fight against homelessness. Right now, there are over 40,000 unhoused people across our city, with 2,400 right here in Council District 15. This crisis is one of the biggest challenges facing our city, and that's why Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass declared a state of emergency on her very first day in office. Here at the port, we're doing our part to help these members of our community. We've already made port property available to the city for temporary housing, and now we're committed to helping through one of the things that we do best, creating economic opportunity. I'll talk more about this in just a moment. This year, we'll continue to lead the country in port innovation. We remain champions of global efforts to transform and decarbonize the maritime industry. To those who question our resolve, let's not forget, nearly 20 years ago, Los Angeles was the world's first port to plug a container ship into shoreside power. 15 years ago, we committed to aggressively reduce port emissions. And thanks to all of you, we met a number of our 2023 emissions goals 6 years ahead of schedule. In this new year, we'll create more opportunities for community stakeholders. We'll do that by working with our customers across our various business segments. You can find updates on each line of business in your programs, but as we gather again in our world-famous cruise terminal, It's fitting to single out our high-profile cruise business because it came back with a roar last year. 229 cruises departed from the LA waterfront in 2022, the most since year 2008. We'll see just as many sailings this year, if not more. That's an economic benefit of more than $250 million to our local communities and LA's tourism economy. Thanks to Princess Cruises, Norwegian Cruise Line, Royal Caribbean, and Celebrity Cruises, Los Angeles is fast becoming the West Coast port with the most diverse and exciting cruise vacation opportunities. To support that growth, we'll soon move forward with our long-anticipated draft RFP for the development of an outer harbor cruise terminal. Just as we're working to facilitate more economic opportunity for our cruise partners, we're committed to supporting our customers in each of these important business segments. The significance of this port goes beyond what happens on the docks. It's rooted in the responsibility I spoke of earlier, in which we work together to create positive change in our communities. How do we do that? By focusing on two critical imperatives. The first is economic benefit. The second, quality of life. Let's start with the economic benefit we create. Together, we serve the city of Los Angeles as well as all the people and businesses in our region. On a national level, the economic benefits of this port reach nearly every American. And on a global level, we facilitate reliable and predictable access to foreign markets for American exporters and consumers. One way we do all this is through state-of-the-art technology. Our data infrastructure creates a more predictable and efficient supply chain. Digitalization of key cargo movement data, non-proprietary in nature, gives us tremendous insight into supply chain issues, trends, and process improvement opportunities which simply were not available before. For instance, 13 months ago when containers were piling up on our terminals, our Port Optimizer data showed that if a container sat on our docks for more than 9 days, it would likely remain there for weeks. That key insight led us to a unique response. We created a $100 fee to be imposed after 9 dwell days. Almost overnight, the number of boxes started to decline, which helped our terminals return to more normal capacity levels. And I'm pleased to say, as a result, we never had to enact that fee. That's just one example of how the Port Optimizer helps us locate and mitigate problems. The federal government also recognized the importance of information sharing. And last year, with our technology partner Wabtec, we were awarded a $3 million federal transportation grant to build out additional smart functionality. In the coming year, we'll work with Wabtec and so many of our cargo stakeholders to develop 3 additional Port Optimizer modules. One will focus on the export community. Another will be a port-wide truck reservation system. And a third is a unique interface that shares data on warehouse conditions across Southern California. Let's start with the export focus. Over the past several years, heavy fluctuations in vessel schedules and early return dates made it especially challenging for exporters, particularly in the agriculture sector. To share more, here are 2 of our Central Valley customers, Tracy Gardella and Nick Vielewald.
There's a lot of challenges every year to farming, for sure, with weather and water and different things.
The Cotton Belt runs from California all the way over to the Carolinas. Warmer climates, that's where cotton grows best.
Our customers have many options for buying grapes. They prefer the California quality. We're known around the globe for top quality grapes, and they want those, but they do need to get them in a timely manner with reliable transit times.
The cotton industry is an extremely competitive business. Here in the U.S., we're a merchandising company, so we're the middlemen between growers and spinning mills all over the world.
Our primary markets are Asia, from Shanghai all the way down to Jakarta, Indonesia. We want fresh grapes with the freshest green stems, so we're trying to pick, pack, and ship as soon as we can.
We are one of not many left that are only handling one commodity.
The pandemic, what the big problem was delays and port congestion, a lack of equipment, and then there was a lack of space on some vessels.
Trucks had to turn around, drive back to Bakersfield. Additional fees to leave it in the trucker's yard, and additional chassis fees, detention and demurrage, the rates add up. A lot of times that we end up getting containers to the spinning mill and we're losing money.
If there's a 1 week, 2 week delay, the grapes maybe aren't quite as firm. There's a price adjustment that has to be made.
We're trucking stuff from California to Texas and Georgia just to try to get the containers there on time. It takes our logistics department hours and hours a day, calling truckers, the terminals, the shipping lines. Right now, trying to get containers in-gated is like playing darts with a moving dartboard.
An export portal would be a big help for us if we have one site to look at, and instead of making multiple calls to find out the latest information on ERDs and cutoffs for the vessels.
Having a one-stop shop to get all those to be visible and transparent with all these dates and times would be a huge advantage for us.
Our new Port Optimizer feature will give American exporters like these better lines of sight on their outbound shipping services so they don't incur costs that hurt their bottom line. The second module, the truck reservation system, will also be an extremely important addition to the Port Optimizer. On average, 50% of our truck gates go unused at marine terminals every day. 50%. While there's no simple fix, we believe a truly effective appointment system will improve that number. It will also help speed turnaround for our truck drivers and reduce emissions from their idling big rigs. Lastly, the warehouse and distribution center module will give us visibility into conditions so that we can improve planning for both deliveries and pickups at these facilities. As you can see, data infrastructure is critical to the stability and growth of America's global trade. But just as important is protecting our data against cyber incidents that could disrupt cargo flow. That's why I'm pleased to announce our Cyber Resilience Center is now fully operational and the number of participants is growing. This early warning system enables our cargo stakeholders to automatically share cyber threat indicators within the CRC community. Details of intrusion attempts are shared in real time and anonymously so that everyone can stay on alert while protecting themselves as well as their brands. No other port in the world has a groundbreaking defense solution quite like this. In the coming year, we look forward to increasing our cyber readiness and expanding our CRC community. 2022 was another year of high-profile visitors. Our meeting with President Biden last June was a watershed moment. We also welcomed Department of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg and Labor Secretary Marty Walsh multiple times. And we were pleased to host the administration's port and supply chain envoy, retired U.S. Army General Stephen R. Lyons, as well as many other state and federal policymakers. Each of these officials recognized the importance of our port to the U.S. economy, which helped raise the profile of our nation's supply chain. As a result, the substantial levels of dedicated port funding are available from both Washington and Sacramento. We can't miss this opportunity. So we have $1 billion worth of projects lined up and ready for investment. One recent high point was the $20 million in federal funding we received toward the construction of a 4-lane grade separation. This project will enable efficient access to an 80-acre maritime support facility right here on Terminal Island. The area will be used as flex space for containers and chassis, which helps us lower emissions while safely speeding cargo in and out of marine terminals. The facility will also reduce the likelihood of equipment being abandoned on our streets in our local neighborhoods. The project will break ground in 2024 and create an estimated 300 construction jobs. Funds for these projects and those like them are only a down payment for transforming the regional freight system, keeping us more competitive and efficient. They also help us reduce impacts on surrounding communities by increasing safety and improving overall air quality across Southern California. Unfortunately, the money on the table is only a fraction of what other countries are investing in their ports. Bottom line, we need more. Our ports must have sustained federal and state partnerships, followed by private sector investment in order to remain resilient and ready for the future. For example, dedicated funding will help us partner with port customers and stakeholders to reach our zero emissions goals. It will also put us on a path for a ZE drayage fleet by the year 2035. The key to making our plans a reality is working in lockstep with regional transportation partners like Stephanie Wiggins at LA Metro. Take a listen to what Stephanie has to say.
Well, with 40% of our nation's goods coming from the San Pedro Bay ports, it's a global economic imperative that we continue to maintain and improve our region's transportation infrastructure. Most people may not realize that it's by law, state law, that Metro oversees both the planning of goods and the movement of people. The bipartisan infrastructure law, which Metro strongly backed in partnership with the Port of Los Angeles, it's a tremendous opportunity. Truly once in a lifetime. We need to work together as one cohesive system to ensure that we maximize our investments and keep our communities moving.
Thank you, Stephanie. By working together with LA Metro and dozens of other agencies, we can map out a comprehensive plan that supports cargo flow, commuter mobility, and our transition to zero emissions. And we'll do that in ways that advance inclusivity and equity. Instead of competing against each other for funds, let's come together as a coalition to demonstrate how we can operate, and not just in a system, but as a system. While this work will be done as part of an infrastructure plan, it also supports our second critical imperative: to enhance the quality of life for all Californians. Since 2015, our public access investment plan has funded nearly $234 million in public serving waterfront infrastructure. More recently, those funds went toward the construction of the roadway and public promenades surrounding the future West Harbor commercial development, which broke ground in November on the LA waterfront here in San Pedro. This coming April, we will finally cut the ribbon on the $71 million Wilmington Waterfront Promenade. The Public Access Investment Plan creates a direct link between our cargo success and community investment. Prioritization of projects is driven by direct engagement with local community stakeholders. So the plan funds the waterfront enhancements that are most important to our community. We've already had meetings with Councilmember McCosker along with community stakeholders to extend this program in the coming months. And we're establishing a new slate of waterfront projects that will take us into the future. Investment in our physical infrastructure can enhance the quality of life for our surrounding community. And there are two other areas that we're committed to making a difference. The first is environmental. As we've seen with the devastating floods that have hit California in these past few weeks, climate change continues to impact the health and safety of people around the world. And one of the biggest contributors to this crisis is the global supply chain. We at the port are critically aware of this and committed to finding solutions. To that end, The Shanghai and Singapore green shipping corridors that we announced last year will model the global cooperation needed to accelerate change in the entire maritime industry. The Shanghai route is our busiest trade lane. Reducing emissions in this corridor alone will yield massive reductions. For perspective, a 10% reduction of emissions along this active trade route will produce a benefit at least equal to all of the ship emissions at the Port of LA in a single year. Our partnership with Singapore, the world's largest bunkering hub, will help develop clean fuels, new ship technologies, and best practices. Together, these corridors will drive our largest ocean carriers to begin testing and transitioning to zero life cycle carbon ship operations. We're also close to announcing the implementation plan for the Shanghai corridor, and at the end of this month, we'll host the first meeting of the Singapore Green Shipping Corridor. The city and Port of Los Angeles, together with C40 cities, are cornerstone partners in this global initiative, which is also championed by our U.S. State Department and the United Nations Climate Conference. It's a big step forward in the fight to decarbonize global shipping and lower emissions right here at home. These partnerships are timely as we endeavor to achieve our 2030 goal of zero-emission cargo handling equipment. Right now, we're developing our 2030 roadmap to supply our terminals with clean electricity and fuel. This plan will mean working with the utilities, the Southern California Gas Company, and all of you, our tenants, labor, and equipment manufacturers, to better understand your equipment needs along with those on the infrastructure side. On our end, we will also revisit how we spend the clean truck fund rate collections so that we can expand funding to cargo handling and other equipment. That's why we're working with the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power to upgrade our grid. We've also joined a statewide coalition called the Alliance for Renewable Clean Hydrogen Energy Systems, or ARCHES, which is applying for up to $1.4 billion from the U.S. Department of Energy to establish a green hydrogen hub anchored right here in the port complex. This is another massive undertaking, and we expect to share some positive updates with you as they develop very soon. But the area that demands critical attention right now is getting zero-emission trucks into production as soon as possible. While Toyota, Kenworth, Volvo, Peterbilt, and others are championing this effort with us, we need to help accelerate the ZE market and fast-track production of these trucks. At the same time, we must speed the development of electric and hydrogen fueling infrastructure across the Southland. And just as important, these trucks have to be affordable to our private sector drayage partners. Roughly 45% of the trucks in our drayage fleet come from small businesses. Their big rigs are usually older models, costing maybe $50,000. How can these businesses afford ZE trucks that are predicted to sell for 8 to 10 times that amount? They'll need our help. With funds from our Clean Truck Fund Rate, we started our first grant program last September to help subsidize the purchase of ZE trucks. We offered $5 million in voucher incentives that would pay $150,000 toward the purchase of each new ZE truck. So far, we've had 4 applicants. That's 4 trucks. Why the low number? Because these trucks are not only costly, they're not commercially available yet. So last month, we issued separate grants to get more pre-production ZE big rigs on the street. Thanks to that funding, a total of $6 million was awarded to 2 local trucking companies who will use the funds to purchase a total of 22 pre-production battery electric trucks. That's 22 big rigs out of 20,000 in our drayage fleet today. It's a start, but the process truly is complicated. One of the companies that was awarded funding is Gardena-based MLI Leasing. They'll use their $3 million grant in partnership with Peterbilt to produce and deploy 10 ZE trucks, which will arrive later this year. Here's Michael Mayer from MLI Leasing to explain the complexity of their transition to ZE big rigs.
Our trucks operate up and down the local community freeways. As a small and medium business, it would have been very difficult for us to purchase the electric vehicles without the grant funding. The top three challenges, first would be the cost, the second would be the availability of the asset, and the third would be the availability of space and the infrastructure. The total amount is $5.9 million. So the port gave us a lot of credibility. MLI had to come up with 50% of the total cost of the truck and the infrastructure. There's a prototype. It took a lot of months of testing and just tweaking the truck to actually get it to work. We want to continue to be part of the reduction of greenhouse gases as well as the continued health of the local Southern California port area. We hope that there'll continue to be a mix of private and public money so that businesses continue to embed themselves in the local community.
For companies like MLI Leasing, we must make the transition to ZE trucks easier, and that means removing red tape and cost barriers. It also means modernizing our laws on every level, whether it's our tax code, insurance regulations, or other incentives. We have to do whatever it takes to make these trucks of the future commercially available and affordable for our drayage industry. During COVID-19, our nation was able to reduce the vaccine production timeline from 10 years to 10 months. We need that same sense of urgency to tackle climate change and get ZE trucks on our roads today. Because here's the truth. Without public and private sector alignment, our 2035 zero emissions drayage goal simply won't happen. The second way we can build a better quality of life is with a workforce infrastructure that meets the economic needs of our surrounding communities. We play a vital role in our nation's supply chain. We have interconnected responsibilities, but none of those are more important than the ones that we have to the people of the city of Los Angeles and, by extension, the entire Southland. Please raise your hands if your organization has a job opening today. See a lot of hands up. Let the Port of Los Angeles help you fill those vacancies. With our convening power, our partnerships with other city agencies, along with state and federal resources, we can be of service to you. I've spent my entire career in this industry, and it's a great one. But there are few opportunities today where a box cutter at a warehouse could one day run that facility. We need to change that in order to help our industry flourish. And we can do that by not just offering jobs, but offering careers. Career paths not only benefit employers by providing a consistent, well-trained workforce, they also benefit the workers by giving them a ladder they can climb to earn a good living that provides for their families. We know there are challenges. First, we're attempting to do this in an industry that doesn't have a deep history of workforce development. Second, the port's trying to do this with a workforce that's not our own. We cannot make this change by ourselves. That's why we're actively looking to expand our partnerships from agencies and employers to academic institutions and many organizations just like yours. Anyone who can help us attract and train people for meaningful careers across our goods movement sector is welcome to join our effort. Carolyn Hull, who leads the City of Los Angeles Economic Workforce and Development Department, is one of our foundational partners in this effort. Listen to what Carolyn has to say.
The most promising opportunities are within the goods movement ecosystem, transportation, waterborne cargo, including the blue economy. EWDD and the Port of Los Angeles are partnering to make sure that we have the properly trained workforce for the occupations and jobs of the future. One of our priorities is to support the innovation system. EWDD operates numerous workforce centers around the city of Los Angeles. These provide no-cost resources so that job seekers and employers can be matched. And they also provide these services in multiple languages, all the way from Armenian to Farsi. Success would mean that the community would have access to all the amazing jobs here at the port at living wages. We're going to work together to make sure that we have the workforce that has the skills for the 21st century.
The EWDD is the perfect example. We want to bring their expertise and resources to our port community. And to those of you who raised your hands just a moment ago, you're also included in this. This year, in partnership with employers, unions, nonprofits, and agencies like the EWDD, we will create the framework for a Port of Los Angeles workforce initiative. This initiative will focus on providing careers to those who are looking for better economic opportunities. It will support employers who want to explore hiring people from our veterans community or our unhoused residents. And it will also aid employers looking to develop career paths for new or existing positions. At the same time, our workforce initiative will ensure that those interested in port-related jobs will receive the training they need to be successful. This can be done through existing courses, apprenticeship programs, or the future goods movement training campus that we're developing with the Port of Long Beach and the California Workforce Development Board. Our workforce initiative will serve as a roadmap to filling the training and recruiting needs of today, as well as a guide for navigating the future. Earlier, I spoke about our ambitious journey to zero emissions. Accomplishing that goal is not just about the transitioning of equipment. It's also about the training of our industry's workforce to succeed in the ZE technology environment. That same dynamic applies to our workforce initiative. It will take a coordinated and sustained effort by all of us, but our program will serve as a North Star in our endeavor to create a flourishing industry. It's because of our work together that the state of the Port of Los Angeles in 2023 is strong and focused on our long-term success. I said earlier, Los Angeles is the future, only sooner. In closing, I want to build on that with a quote from William Gibson, who said, "The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed." Our job, our mission, is to ensure that our future is evenly distributed, that it's equitable, prosperous, and sustainable. We're a young port, only 115 years old. We live in a world of ports that have existed for thousands of years. But in our comparatively short lifespan, the world has changed in dramatic ways and at an unprecedented pace, a pace that has unfortunately left many behind. So today, we must think about what it means to be a sustainable port. Yes, it means sustainable environmental practices, but sustainability also means leadership that leaves no one behind, a workforce that's empowered for the future, and an economy that benefits everyone. Here at the Port of Los Angeles, that's the vision that we're committed to creating together. The LA model, a sustainable port that delivers economic benefit and a better quality of life for all. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the 850 women and men at the Port of Los Angeles, it has been my privilege to be with you again today. Thank you very much.